welcome. As you probably just saw, Christian just gave you a lecture about design theory. Now we're going to transition from theory into a little bit more of the technical side of design. So I'm talking about file types, what types of printers you send files to, what types of software do designers use, and rasterization versus vector. So as a designer, we typically like to work with what's called a creative suite. So what that is it's a software platform that gives us the tools that we need on the computer to design anything from a brochure to a website, or maybe we simply took someone's portrait and we need to give them a touch-up. So there's our different design platforms available to you, and some have advantages and some have disadvantages. So the most popular among design professionals is Adobe Creative Suite. The benefits of Adobe Creative Suite is it has the most tools available to designers, the most integrated. It's also the most expensive, unfortunately. But with it, you can literally design anything from a movie to a website to a flyer, and you can do it lightning fast. However, some of us can't afford to dish out thousands just to get a premium product. So for those of you out there, I can feel your pain. There are still options available to you that give you the tools that you need to create professional, refined design that communicates effectively to your stakeholders. So there's two types of it. There's cloud software, I'll talk a little bit about that, and then there's also software that you want to download. So if you have access to the internet, there's a great creative suite available to you, and it's called Aviary. Aviary is basically, it's the free version of Adobe Creative Suite with a little bit less of the functionality. But I highly recommend you go ahead and Google Aviary, look it up, and you're going to be blown away. It's got great color palette options and tools that you can use. It has photo manipulation software, it has document layout software, and it has image drawing and vector drawing software, such as very similar to the Adobe Illustrator, for example. So that's a little bit about the software that designers use. So as designers, we'll use that, but then once we're done creating something, it's time to send the file out to the printer. And some printers, for example, if Christian and I are working on a marketing campaign, and we want to send the file out to our printer in Texas, they have specific guidelines for what types of files they need. If we send them an Illustrator or Photoshop file, they might not be able to print what we send. There's a universal file file system that you want to save it as before you send it out to the printer. So there's two categories of it. There is the raster and there's the vector. So if you're going to send out a raster file, and I'll talk a little bit about what a raster is after this, you want to save it as a TIFF file. And if you want to send it out as a vector file, you want to save it as an EPS, but preferably you want to save it as a PDF. So again, for vector files, save it as a PDF or an EPS, and for rasterized file, you'll save it as a TIFF. So that's a little bit about file types and extensions. So let's move on and talk about what I really want to emphasize for this class, and that is raster versus vector. So the difference between a raster file and a vector file can mean the difference between whether or not your design actually looks effective and looks the way you designed it on the monitor. And please allow me to illustrate. So let's say you are a professional photographer and you took someone's photograph. You took their portrait. Here we go. allow me to illustrate. Okay, so, okay. So there you go. You took the photograph, and let's say that this is a TIFF file, okay? And it's 200 pixels by 500 pixels, okay? So when you say something that is a TIFF, basically what that means is it's a matrix of squares. And if you zoomed in, this image would be made up of 200 squares this way, 500 this way. That's basically what it is. The problem is, let's say you took the photograph and your client says, "Oh, that looks great. I actually want to put this on a billboard. Let's blow it up. Let's to 2 feet by 5 feet, right?" So when you do that, unfortunately, this is what's going to happen. So it's going to look like this, right? Unfortunately, it just, people notice. And one of the quickest signs, and you can tell when you look at a design and you think, "Oh, that does not look professional," is the resolution. Are the photographs, are they tack sharp when you look? Does it look blurry? When you look, do you see what looks like what would have been a matrix of pixels that are created from a TIFF file? If that's the case, then this image was enlarged well beyond its limits, to still look like a portrait instead of a matrix of squares. So the same thing happens with text. So similarly, for portrait, if you have a text file, with a Times New Roman T, capital T, and you zoom it in, you're going to get the same thing. So text, by the way, this is why text is vector, and we'll talk about vector after this. It's going to look it's just not going to look right. You cannot save text as a TIFF, and if you're going to save an image, there is a limit to how large you can make it before you can start seeing the pixels and it becomes distorted. So that's a little bit about TIFF files and rasterized files, because a TIFF file is a rasterized file, and the limitations of a rasterized file. So there's a good thing that there are vector files available to you. A vector, unlike a rasterized file, which is simply a matrix of squares, a vector file is a collective of algorithms and mathematical shapes. So it tells the printer not just to draw a matrix of squares, but if it's something like a T, it's going to tell it to draw this arc here. It's going to tell it to draw this straight line. It's going to tell it, and there's mathematical shapes that, it calculates to tell the printer how to draw it. And what it translates into is, instead of looking like this, when you enlarge it, this is rasterized. If this was vector, and you blew it up, it's going to look crisp. So, if it's a photograph, save it as a rasterized file. Don't enlarge it to the point that you're going to see a matrix. If it's text, or it's some sort of shape that you want to preserve its integrity, save it as a vector file, and then it's going to be scalable. Save it as a vector, and then when it scales, instead of showing the matrix, it's going to look perfect. So that's a little bit about the technical side of design. So again, we talked a little bit about software platforms and then raster versus vector. You're going to get some more materials about us that's going to talk about that in greater detail, and please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions. Christian and I are available, and we want to make you successful. So thank you.